Hey, hey, Kawhi is broadening his search for a new team. ESPN Spurs reporter Michael C. Wright said on the back-to-back podcast that Kawhi's focus has changed due to LeBron's commitment to the Lakers because Kawhi does not want to be second fiddle to LeBron. Stephen A., should Kawhi want to play for the Clippers?
Well, first of all, that's not what I'm hearing.
Okay.
I have not heard that at all. If you recall a few weeks ago, I did talk about how, Kawhi playing in Los Angeles, he's not about the glitz and glamour, the paparazzi type atmosphere. If somebody said that that was the cause, then that would be different. But saying that he doesn't want to play second banana, meaning that he wants the ball, he wants to be the number one offensive option, I'm not sure that that's the reason that is so important to him. Having said all of that, I've also reported that Kawhi Leonard had made it very clear, even though the Lakers are his preference, if that doesn't work out, fine. He is willing to be a Clipper so long as he's in Los Angeles. He doesn't mind. He would prefer the Lakers, but the Clippers are fully aware that he wouldn't mind them if the Lakers scenario did not work out. That is why the Clippers have been behind the scenes, hoping, praying, and in their own subtle ways, attempting to manipulate San Antonio, sort of doing everything it could to hold off on sending Kawhi to the Los Angeles Lakers. Because if indeed they hold off and the Clippers are in a position next summer where Kawhi Leonard is still on the open market and they have the max contract dollars to pay him, they believe their chances are incredibly legitimate to land him in with the Clippers because he does not care for all that glitz and glamour and paparazzi type lifestyle and all of that stuff. All Kawhi wants to do is get the hell out of San Antonio and end up in L.A. That's it. Whether it's for the Lakers or the Clippers, he can stomach it so long as he returns home. That is what I have been told.
I just don't believe the report. It's not that I don't believe the reporting. I do.
Sure.
But I don't believe the report itself that Kawhi doesn't want to play second fiddle. Look, Kawhi Leonard is an all-time great player. Stephen A., he may be one of the top 4 or 5 small forwards I've ever seen. I think, or even like wing players, two-way wings. I think Jordan and Kobe and LeBron, obviously. And then who else am I sure I would put ahead of Kawhi? Dr. J, not in the NBA, obviously in the ABA, but I didn't see that. Scottie Pippen is around there. Like, I'm talking about, he's one of the greatest ever, but no one's ever going to confuse him for the greatest player of all time. But you know what? Lots of folks confuse LeBron for the greatest player of all time. It's a confusion. Jordan's the greatest ever, but LeBron may be number 2. Certainly he's in the top 5, right? Most in the top 3 with Kareem and Jordan. LeBron's just better than everybody. That doesn't mean you play second fiddle with LeBron. If LeBron has a scorer on his team, you think he's not going to use him? LeBron's basically your point forward, if not guard, right? So what's Kawhi really? He's a perfect complementary piece. In a sense, so is LeBron. He'll do what the team needs. I don't think it's just self-serving, well, LeBron just wants the ball in his hands. No, I think usually that's in the best interest of the team. And Kawhi, too, I find it ridiculous that Kawhi I only want to be, what fiddle he plays, first or second is important to him. Maybe to his uncle, maybe to someone around him, maybe to business associates, but to Kawhi Leonard, have people seen the way he plays defense and even the way his offensive game came about? Do you know what that requires? It requires an incredible work ethic, incredible competitiveness, incredible discipline, because he's not like one of these freelance gambling players on defense. He's an incredibly disciplined player on defense. That just doesn't jive with the kind of guy who thinks to himself, I don't want to play second fiddle to LeBron. Kawhi Leonard just doesn't seem to be. Now, the Clippers are another case. Why do I think the Clippers are viable? Jerry West. Because Jerry West is probably the greatest executive in the history of the NBA. So he's advising the Clippers. I don't put anything past Jerry West. He might get his man in the end. But I'm looking at the Clippers. What do they have to offer? They don't have any assets worth anything. The Lakers, it's not that they have the most assets, Boston does, but the Lakers have the most young, good, ascending assets that they're willing to part with. No one else who has those kind of assets seems willing to part with them, and even if the Clippers were willing, they don't have the assets. I don't see how Jerry West could prove me wrong. He's the greatest ever, as I said. I don't see how the Clippers land him. I think the Lakers either get him now in a trade or later in free agency?
Well, the Clippers are not trying to land him now. They recognize the fact that they've got to get their salary down to about $60 million. And at that particular moment in time, they anticipate that they'll have enough money to offer a max contract to a player. And they expect the guy to be available as Kawhi Leonard. Their only hope is not about trying to offer anything now because they know they don't have the assets. What they're hopeful of is that Kawhi won't land with the Lakers in that span, that San Antonio won't cave and give him away to the Lakers, or that, that somehow, some way his arrival to the Lakers can be derailed in time for them to legitimately compete with the Lakers for his services. Because whereas somebody would say, well, we've got LeBron and we're the Lakers and this is Laker Nation and Laker Town and listen, they're second fiddle, they're our fair weathered stepchild and what have you. The Clippers can make the argument, literally can make the argument, yep, we're all of those things. Seems to be exactly the kind of environment you want, Kawhi. How about it? And they'd have a chance that he'd say yes, simply because his personality gears or veers towards something like that. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, let's keep in mind, though, the Spurs said that they wouldn't trade him to the West if they do trade him. And then if we're going East, it'd be interesting to see if he'd be open to a team like New York. I'm talking if we're going into 2019.
Yeah.
But, guys, Woj is also reporting that free agent guard Tony Parker has agreed to a 2-year, $10 million deal with Charlotte. Parker ending his 17-year run in San Antonio that included 4 NBA championships. Parker ranks first in assists, second in games and minutes, third in field goals, fifth in steals and free throws. And a source just reported that Greg Popovich, he called him in the last hour to inform him of the decision to accept the Charlotte offer. Guys, so, Max, I'll start with you on this. With the eventual departure of Kawhi and now this, Max, is this the official end of the Spurs era?
Yeah, I think it is. Normally, again, the way I said Jerry West is the greatest executive of all time. Popovich may be, who else as an executive / coach since Red Auerbach can compare to Greg Popovich? He's incredible, and everyone loves everything about him, on and off the court. Not everything about him, but, they love what he represents, the way he's been a real American leader in a time of need, actually, at least as a public figure. The things he said, he's outspoken, he's righteous, and love Popovich. But given his age, given where the franchise is in terms of resources, draft picks, etc., I know they got Kawhi not with a top pick. They could identify a hidden jewel and polish it over several years, and maybe the Spurs will be right back to where they were. But given Popovich's age, and given what it looks like the Spurs have in the cupboard, which to me, it doesn't look bare, but it doesn't look plentiful either, I think that the Kawhi situation, more to the point of it, but also maybe symbolically, the Tony Parker situation represents the end of an era. Guys, it's the right move for the Spurs. I don't know why they paid Pau Gasol and kept him around, but they shouldn't pay Tony Parker at this point. He's a future Hall of Famer. He's a former Finals MVP. But given his age and the kind of player he is now, they're right to move on from him. But I think symbolically, it does kind of represent the end, certainly, of the last Spurs era, but maybe even of the Popovich era as, the Spurs, this perennial team that could win the championship any year.
Stephen A., before you jump in, let me just add, Woj also reporting that the Spurs did want Parker back, but Parker will take on a significant role with the Hornets, apparently behind Kemba Walker.
Well, he's going to take on a more significant role, Molly, because he's going to play more minutes and he's going to make more money. The Spurs weren't going to pay him $10 million a year, and more importantly, they weren't going to play him more than the 19 minutes per game that he got last year. DeJounte Murray is the new point guard for the San Antonio Spurs. They got a lot of love for him. He's got nice height on him, nice length on him. He's shown some ability as well, and that goes a long way. But I agree with Max in terms of this being the end of an era, and I'll tell you why. The era began not just because of David Robinson, but primarily with the arrival of Tim Duncan. And it wasn't just because of Tim Duncan's greatness. It's because Tim Duncan bought whatever Greg Popovich and the Spurs organization was selling. And so because of that, that's what enabled Greg Popovich to become who he was. Whether he is as great of a man as I know him to be, when you look at stuff for the media purposes, how truculent he could come across and whatever the case may be, those are the kind of things that, you couldn't pull that off unless you were winning, and you couldn't pull that off unless you had somebody like Tim Duncan who always sided with you, stood by your side, and allowed you to coach him. I recall one time when I was covering the Sixers and Larry Brown and Allen Iverson were getting into it, and Allen Iverson got benched for showing up late to a practice one day. That night, Greg Popovich benched Tim Duncan because Greg Popovich and Larry Brown were that close. Tim Duncan hadn't done anything wrong, but Greg Popovich sat him on the bench anyway because he wanted to show that indeed stars can be benched. You don't just sit up there and throw somebody out there and let anybody circumvent rules and regulations just because they're the marquee. There must be order. Greg Popovich was a protege of Larry Brown's. He did it just to help Larry Brown send that kind of message at that particular moment in time. At least that's what I was told by Larry Brown and confidants of Larry Brown. So what you have is a situation where once upon a time that could happen. In this day and age, players have more control than ever before, more control of their own destiny and destination than ever before. And when you have one of the elite players in the game who is as mild-mannered and as low-key as they come, still wanting to depart from the Riverwalk in San Antonio to go to Los Angeles, that is a problem. And then also we forget this. How many times did we talk on this show about how much LeBron James loves and reveres Greg Popovich? Considers him an incredible coach, an incredible basketball mind. He has an incredible amount of love for Greg Popovich. I didn't see San Antonio on his list of destinations. He wasn't going there. And so when you look at it from that perspective, you can love, respect, and revere Greg Popovich and truly appreciate the greatness and the first-class status that the San Antonio Spurs have held for years. But in the end, are you clamoring to go there if you get the choice to choose your destination as a free agent? 99% of the time, the answer is no for the truly marquee guys. And that's the difference.
Max,
you don't have that anymore.
Before you jump in here, I just want to welcome everybody as we cross the 5 o'clock hour here into our First Take afternoon special. Max Kellerman, Stephen A. Smith, Molly Kerriman. Obviously, we're discussing if this is an end of the era for the Spurs with Kawhi wanting out and Parker now leaving. Max?
Yeah, the question is, did the era end with Tim Duncan, really? I mean, look, Kawhi Leonard, they were up 20 points, 23 points on the Warriors at the half when Kawhi got hurt in Game 1. But none of us believed that the Spurs were going to actually beat the Warriors. We figured they might extend after seeing that first half of basketball, 6 games, something like that. But Tim Duncan was a uniquely great player. You mentioned his personality and what he accepted from Popovich, much in the same way as great as Belichick is, and I sing Belichick's praises, much like Popovich, as not just a great coach, but a great GM, right? And I brought up Red Auerbach. Also, he had Bill Russell. Popovich had Tim Duncan. Obviously, Belichick has Tom Brady. These on-the-court kind of extensions of the coach/GM, the player leaders. There are very few players throughout history like Bill Russell or Tim Duncan or Tom Brady. So as much as I credit Popovich, a lot of it may have been, Popovich was fortunate. He had a guy like Duncan. Duncan's gone, and I don't think it's coincidental that it seems to fall apart in his absence.
We got to leave it there, guys. Still to come here on this First Take afternoon special, does LeBron's move to L.A. mean that Magic's Lakers are now on the same level with the Rockets? The fella's answer might surprise you. That's next. Today is the first day that Chris Paul can sign his 4-year, $160 million extension with the Rockets. Houston lost Trevor Ariza on free agency to the Suns, while Clint Capella is a restricted free agent but expected to be back with the team. Now, the Lakers, on the other hand, have made a ton of moves in free agency with the additions of LeBron James, JaVale McGee, Lance Stevenson, and Rajon Rondo to a talented young core. Stephen A., let me ask you this. Are the Lakers close to the Rockets now?
I think they're closer. I think the Rockets need to get their hands on somebody like Carmelo Anthony. I think that if the Rockets don't find a way to replace what Trevor Ariza gave them, they're going to suffer because of it. They're still going to be a good team. They're still going to make the playoffs. They're still going to be one of the top 3 or 4 teams within the Western Conference. But when we talk about their formidability, you've got to make up for the loss of Trevor Ariza. Now, Carmelo Anthony is not going to do that on the defensive end, but he should be able to do that on the offensive end. And his potency as an offensive player with the right personnel and playing the right position as opposed to playing out of position and looking out of sync, I definitely think bodes well for the Houston Rockets. You have to make up for the loss of Trevor Ariza. We can't sit here and act like losing Trevor Ariza is no big deal. It's a very big deal. You had to lose him to take care of CP3. You had to lose him to take care of Clint Capella. But make no mistake, you've taken a step back unless you offset the loss of Trevor Ariza. And if you've taken a step back with the Lakers having arrived and taking a step forward, I definitely think that puts them in a closer position to compete with the Houston Rockets if you don't replace Trevor Ariza. I definitely believe that.
Well, of course they're closer. They got LeBron James, but they are not close to the Houston Rockets yet. Not really close. Not actually. Now, we'll see, they get Kawhi Leonard, we'll reevaluate. Even if the Lakers, see, I see it differently. If the Lakers get Carmelo, I think Carmelo would work well with LeBron. I do not see him as a fit in Houston. In fact, I would think he might make the Houston Rockets worse, not better. Recall when the Oklahoma City Thunder got Carmelo, I wasn't so sure that it definitely made them the best matchup for the Warriors. I wasn't sure they were better than the Rockets, and in fact, they weren't nearly as good as the Rockets. The Rockets were way better than them, and partly that was Carmelo not having a very good effect on that team. So Carmelo, at this point in his career, especially the way the league has changed, it depends where he fits in. If he goes to the Lakers, maybe they've caught up to the Rockets a little bit more, because especially in the playoffs, the Rockets will have a better regular season record, but we'll see what happens playoff time. But I don't see how he replaces Trevor Ariza on that team. He's the opposite of really a 3-and-D guy, which is really what Trevor Ariza is. He's the poster child for that nowadays. The point is this about the Rockets. They missed their window, in my opinion. I thought that going into the playoffs, they were going to unseat the Warriors. And I think events proved me right, because Chris Paul gets hurt, is not available in Game 7, and without one of their two best players, not there, their emotional leader, and having one of the worst shooting nights in the history of basketball from outside, and what they do is shoot from the outside, they still only lost by single digits. To me, it is clear, had Chris Paul played for the Rockets that game, the Rockets beat the Warriors. But I think that's it. That was their opportunity. The Warriors are even more experienced now. They're feeling themselves more. They've shown the ability to turn it on, at least in the finals, where they swept the Cavs. They, even against the Rockets, took advantage of opportunities. And now they've added a guy who, in Boogie Cousins, if he can just get healthy before the playoffs start, get his basketball legs under him, they're going to be impossible on offense. Impossible. Meantime, the Rockets lose Trevor Ariza. You're right, Stephen A. They still have to retain Clint Capella, and they're not going to have the resources left to get any other 3-and-D guy who fits in the way Trevor Ariza did. I think the Rockets' opportunity was last postseason. I picked them to win. I thought I was actually proven right by events. They got very unlucky. But unless, barring some unforeseen move by Houston, and I don't think it's Carmelo Anthony, I think that ship has sailed.
Well, I think that a lot of people have ignored what they saw from the Golden State Warriors in these playoffs. There was some vulnerability there. And I think that obviously we think that DeMarcus Cousins offsets that with his arrival. Could happen, but we don't know that to be the case yet. Draymond Green has got to improve on his jump shot, obviously. Kevin Durant and those guys got to continue to remain in sync. You hear there's some rumblings every now and then about, everything is cool, and then another minute you hear things are not so cool. Obviously, when I look at the Houston Rockets and how the Houston Rockets got all up in the Golden State Warriors, just all up in their chest, that resonated with me because that showed a recipe for their discomfort. The fact that you can make them a bit uncomfortable. You can make them press a little bit. So I think all of those things are things to consider when you look at the Lakers, you look at the Rockets, and you look at other teams, particularly with LeBron in L.A. right now, because I don't think moves have stopped being made, and I think other things are going to happen within the conference because people have noticed those very vulnerabilities that I just alluded to.
Yeah, but ultimately you're still saying that Houston has the edge, obviously just that the Lakers are coming. It's getting closer.
The Lakers are coming.
Of course.
The Lakers are coming.
All right. Still to come, guys, Carmelo is reportedly on his way out of OKC. Wait until you hear where Stephen A. says he wants to go. That's next on this special edition of First Take. People, stay here.